Hi, I'm Lisa Singer, the event editorial manager at Media Post, and welcome to our new series, Insider Summit BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Leslie Garrard, and she is the new CEO of the underwear and apparel brand TomboyX. Welcome, Leslie. Well,
Thank you so much, Lisa. Happy to be here.
yeah, and I have to say, this is very much a new position, new CEO. Welcome, congratulations. That's very exciting for you.
Yeah, super exciting. Nothing like taking the baton from two co-founders who, built the TomboyX brand from scratch. Yeah, just excited to be part of the journey as we continue to grow and scale our brand impact.
Yeah, and I mean, because really you had been with TomboyX for really just about a year. And then all of a sudden was that like surprising to you? Did you know that you were kind of being groomed for this?
That's a good question. So I, I don't, I tend not to be one of those folks who kind of thinks about like, oh, this is going to happen, right? So I take things as they come and believe that all is possible. I knew coming into TomboyX in October of 2019 as the COO that I was in, kind of the number 2 leadership position in the company. I joined an incredibly strong leadership team with our merchants, our marketing team at the time, and our CFO. And I was just happy to kind of provide as much support and leadership as I could to the organization, learn as much as I possibly could. And and then Fran called me one day. She's like, "Hey, what do you think about being CEO? And what do you think about that in September?" And I was like, "Great, let's do this."
Wow. Yeah, I know. I remember because we were talking, because you were going to be joining us at our upcoming D2C summit. And, I had already looked at you on LinkedIn. Then I looked just before our call and I'm like, wait, she's CEO. And then when I got you on the phone, you were just like, yeah, new job, just started.
I know. I called you. I'm like, can you just update my registration, please?
Yeah, really. I mean, that's amazing. So definitely congratulations. And I also love looking at your LinkedIn. You have a quote, and let me read it. It's be exactly who you were born to be, no apologies, because fitting in was never the point. I want to ask you, was there a time when fitting in was the point for you?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think happiness is being kind of content in who you are. And, this is, I think, the challenge that we have as women or women leaders, or when we think about kind of just gender norm or just social impact and social awareness is, there's so much of like, you're supposed to be this, or you have to be this type of person, or you have to be this type of gender. I think about all the time walking into a retail store and it's like the men's section and the women's section. I'm like, can I just find the clothes that like represent me and fit really well? And I don't know how you size them or design them. And so, I've always just kind of thought about, what does it mean to be who you are? I think as an executive and a leader, to have that kind of sense of self-awareness, and I think just be a great listener, as well, because then you can kind of find out the areas that you do resonate and the areas where you kind of might need more support to help kind of, more for or hang with folks in a way that is more effective in that. But I think if you're trying to fit in, then you're not yourself. You're trying to be somebody else or somebody else's perception of you. And I don't know. That's not what being human is for me and for TomboyX.
And well, the thing is, and I think you made a really good point in the terms of, as a leader, as a woman in your position, you try to just listen and be there, because a lot of people aren't that strong necessarily, women, men, whatever, and they're not comfortable just who they are. They do want to fit in a little bit more. Do you feel that like, did something like that, was there someone in your life that helped you to feel that kind of strength? And how are you sort of trying to then, give that back to the people who work with you?
Yeah, I think, I'm fortunate to have worked with a lot of different leaders over the course of my, kind of career. And you kind of internalize things that help you along the way. A couple of things that I think of a lot is managing to outcomes. So if you know what good looks like, there's so many different ways in which you can allow things to get to good. But if you just know what good looks like, sometimes the team can get to good, or you can kind of help steer the team to good. I think of this water skiing analogy sometimes, which is, sometimes as a leader, you need to be driving the water skiing boat and kind of pulling the water skier behind you. And sometimes you're right next to the water skier alongside, and sometimes you're the water skier being pulled, by the rest of the team. And so I think it's really important to modulate your leadership style based on the outcomes in this situation on that. Because leaders for me are not the person who necessarily leads out in front. Leadership for me is how do you be of benefit to others, and there's a lot of different ways in which you can be that benefit.
And I think that, I mean, even looking back at this past year, even a little bit longer than the past year, inclusivity is something that people are really demanding more of from, marketers, from brands, and it's really been top of mind, and hopefully it will stay that way. Sometimes it can be just flash in a pan, like people get on these, we're going to do this now, and then it kind of goes away, and that's when brands maybe sometimes just sort of jump on whatever is trending at the time. How can, like, what you guys are doing, it, you guys are inclusive, you guys, that is part of who you are. What about other brands? First of all, do you think they have responsibility to also do this? And if so, what can they do best in terms of, they're not necessarily all where you guys are, but in their journey, where can they sort of move ahead and keep this movement going?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's so poignant for kind of where we are now, society at large. So, in terms of brands, I think, brands and businesses, they need to, they just need to acknowledge, reflect, and celebrate the diversity that exists in humanity, and reflect that. And I think, too often than not, we see it either in terms of a performative way or a marketing way, or we're going to pride wash for a month, you name it, it becomes an Instagram campaign. And so I think the challenge that you have to ask yourself as leaders and brands and organizations, which is, what do we stand for? What's important to us? And how does that just become part of our DNA? So for example, for us to be inclusive, it's like we're an incredibly diverse team of folks, whether it's LGBTQ, high representation of people of color, non-binary, dogs, cats, like you name it, so an emphasis in terms of DEI and hiring and training and development is just kind of core to that. And then when it comes to, our apparel business, I think a lot of folks, think about, and this is kind of the, I'll use Victoria's Secret as a foil, which is they've, promoted and promulgated this version of what women should look like, but the average woman in the United States is an extra large, and think about all the different body types and shapes that that we have, and all shapes, sizes, forms, and orientations. And so for us, when we design product, we fit tested on models 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x, because we want it to fit unbelievably well for whoever you are, and when you're in that size. And it's just part of our ethic and how we go about it. We definitely don't kind of size it for a medium and stretch it up. It's not going to fit you perfectly, and we want it to fit you really well.
Yep. And I think having, as you said, that diverse group of people working with you, you're really starting from within, and that's a great way, because you listen to everyone around you. And if you only have one kind of person, then you're not going to hear all the other voices.
Exactly. Diversity of types of people, backgrounds, and thought. I've definitely, spent some time in corporate America, and I know what diversity looks like. And I also know what, I was reading some great article. I'm a super fan of Adam Grant, kind of a social psychologist and writer. And there was this funny comment yesterday about toxic positivity, this idea where everyone in a culture has to, always be positive and always kind of say the right thing. And diversity is about creating, not necessarily saying the sameness, but maybe coming at it from different perspectives and adding value to the conversation. There's a reason, why a group of diverse people solving a business problem is gonna far exceed a bunch of Harvard MBAs. And no offense to Harvard, even though I went to Stanford. Sorry.
I know that. I was pretty impressed. Not only did you go to Stanford, you were the captain of your varsity soccer team. That's pretty impressive there. So
I know,
not
super
only
lucky.
smart, you have physical skills.
I know. I know. Wow. That's because my superpower is hand-eye coordination. I was a goalie way back in the day. And yeah, go card. Feel so grateful for getting to be a student athlete.
I was actually a goalie in like elementary. I was called Octo because I never let a goal go by.
Hey, that's awesome. Ooh.
Yeah, I didn't continue it on. I just did it elementary, and then I ended up being a runner. I did track through high school. Anyway, but so we mentioned you went to Stanford, obviously, and then,
Mhm.
as you said, you've been in different businesses, some more traditional, or some more, that corporate kind of
Mhm.
atmosphere. And talk about that though a little bit, because you did start out. I think you did an agency. We're at an agency first, but you then were in e-com, in retail with e-commerce, and then you then went more traditional with Starbucks, REI, and now here you
Mhm.
are back at TomboyX. So talk about that, how your career evolved, like, when you first started and what you saw for yourself, and then how it sort of, got you to where you are right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, talk about the meandering road where, yeah, here I am today. So it starts with both my parents being biochemists. So I'm definitely going to major in English. Um, and
Wait,
then
wait, why biochemist? Why would you mean?
I
Is it
know
like
exactly.
rebelling time?
Yeah, a little bit of rebelling or, totally, different on the different genes.
Like I'm first agreeing with you, and then I'm like, wait.
I know. Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, so I majored in English. Have just been always into kind of, just critical thinking and thought, and then thought I would go to law school, and then realized, wow, not at all. Then I spent probably, a couple years working in traditional management consulting at KPMG, just really good kind of, intro to kind of classic consulting. I worked at Profit Brand Strategy, now called Profit, back in the day during the dot-com boom in the late 90s. Profit was a Scott Galloway company, super fun. Got to spend a lot of time with Scott and work with a lot of just kind of growth companies. Took redenvelope.com online, kind of the online gift giving brand. And that was super fun and really crazy. And then I went to go work for Title IX Sports, which is a women's owned retailer. And this was like back in the day where catalog companies were moving their businesses to online and opening retail stores. So in the early 2000s, I opened retail stores. I ran their kind of web and digital team. And then realized I didn't have $1 million to buy my first house in the Bay Area. So I made the move up to Seattle. And that's when I really kind of started, I'll call it kind of like cut my marketing teeth, so to speak. I worked at T-Mobile USA, really fun organization to work through. I was there about 5 years, and I worked on the customer marketing team, which is a lot of just kind of heavy retention, direct mail, customer lifecycle programs. And then I worked on product marketing, which was super fun. I was the product marketing manager for text messaging back in the day. And that was like, I always hit plan every single quarter. It was awesome. And then a friend of mine went to go work for Starbucks and called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to be my boss?" And I was like, God, I've always wanted to work at Starbucks.
That's funny. Would you like to be my boss? Like,
I know, exactly. I know it's great when you get recruited. We're like, oh my God, they're hiring for my boss. Yeah, and my time at Starbucks was crazy because I interviewed. I think I had 17 interviews because they don't interview you for a specific job. They interview you for your like a category manager position, and then they slot you within the right group that you fit in. And I got really lucky. I ended up on the coffee innovation team, and I spent pretty much like 7.5 years at Starbucks working on powered special projects, a lot of new brand, new category, and new product innovation. And what I loved about Starbucks is one, I got really just great training in kind of just category brand management. What it means to run and grow a bottle Frappuccino business, to launching a ton of new product innovation in retail stores and in grocery stores. And then spent a lot of time working on store experience and kind of customer design. And we're really lucky to launch the Starbucks Reserve brand in the US and in Japan. Got to work on all the brand identity and development and coffee program and in-store experience. It was just super incredible team being part of that and really learning the ingredients as to what makes a great brand. Which what I learned at Starbucks is, great brands are a combination of product design and storytelling. I carry that with me every day now.
Mhm.
And yeah, loved working at Starbucks. But then I kind of reached this point in my career, and I think this is a good question to kind of ask yourself, which is, when you're kind of VP bench, what type of leadership footprint and impact do you want to have, and what type of organization does that look like? And I was like, well, I could be at Starbucks, but then I'd be part of a big organization,
Mhm.
or I can move to a smaller team. So I moved to REI, the nation's largest outdoor retailer, and was super lucky to have a bunch of different roles there. I was the VP of strategy, customer insights and analytics, and then the VP of the experiences business, which is all the really cool adventure travel programs and outdoor school programs and that. And working at REI was great. To be on the VP of strategy for a $3 billion business, you learn a lot.
More of a just the outdoor sports and the type of climate it must have been. It seems like it's more in line with who you are. Not to take away from the Starbucks, but it just seems from just what I've talked with you, it seems that is better fit for you.
Yeah, totally. It's a little bit about, one of the things that excites me most is working for purpose-driven brands, and, brands that you're, personally passionate about. And I do love coffee, but I also love kind of outdoor gear, mainly for the way of life that it generates in terms of, hiking and backpacking and biking and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it was great to be able to kind of go and kind of share an outdoor life, and be part of an organization that gives $8 million away to nonprofits and organizations to kind of help fund that. So truly, I learned a lot about just community engagement and customer engagement on that, which is another incredibly important part of brand building. So yeah, it was great. I mean, I think my time at REI was working with the senior leadership team across all those different disciplines. Gives you that kind of 360-degree vantage of how organization kind of works and comes together, and what drives growth, and how do you execute really well against that. And yeah, and then I had an opportunity to kind of take a moment and think about, okay, what's the next chapter in my life, and what type of impact do I want to have? And I made this call, and I was like, wow, I don't want to work for a big company anymore. And yeah, found Fran and Naomi, and the idea of working for an LGBTQ founded startup that's a Series B company that's in high growth mode, that is all about customer engagement, unbelievable gem of a brand, frothing, high repeat, high NPS business. I mean, it had all the ingredients, and just felt like, wow, this is such an unbelievably great fit. How can I make a leadership impact and just be part of this journey? And here I am.
Well, and I love though, and I've talked with other women who have done similar things. You're in these high positions in very large companies, very successful, known companies. And yet you kind of risk a lot in a sense by going to a company that is a startup
Mhm.
and just diving in there because as you said, you sort of relooked at what you wanted for your life and for yourself and you took that chance. Is that hard to do or like what gave you that push, aside from wanting something new, but being people want a lot of things, but not necessarily have that courage to sort of make that move.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it's a matter of just thinking about, okay, what are the things that are most important to you? And um, for me, at the end of the day, it's really about like mission and people. Like, are you going to be able to be are you going to be able to be part of a team that just thrives and learns together, and it's just super super fun, and um, and then you need to decide, do I want to be part of a big team or a small team? And then you're like, okay, and then what type of I mean, I always use this word like leadership footprint or kind of impact do I want to have? And it's funny because when I left REI, I was managing like, I don't know, 100 plus people, and our TomboyX right now is like 35ish, folks. But I don't ever think about it in terms of size or that. I think about it in terms of just what are the types of meaningful interactions and kind of questions or opportunities or things that you're working through. And I think a lot of times too, this is a really simple question, but when you're in a big company, you kind of have to fit in to something that's already been built. or you're maybe modifying it a little bit. But when you're in a small company, you got to be a builder, and what does it mean to have, that kind of builder mindset, which is, I think we need to retool this, or we need to start this, or this is totally fine. We're going to keep this on the rails. Or like, oh, we actually need to move a warehouse. I mean, just all these kind of things are constantly kind of coming up, which makes it a ton of fun. And I feel, at this point in my career, thankfully, I've had so much experience in the past that I'm like, I can just kind of like rely on muscle memory a little bit, or, rely on the team, have a great team in place so we can kind of work through it. So it's not so daunting because, you've kind of had enough experience that you can kind of move through things.
Yeah, it's a little, I think when you got to kind of make it your own, to a point, you're obviously within an organization, but there must be an excitement to that, like an unknown, as opposed to, as you said, just kind of following the standard line of that corporation. So that's
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good.
No, very true. And part of it too, this has been really fun. There's a lot of, I think we have an unbelievably great board and board partner in terms of our VC, and they, there's just really basic principles that, I just try to think about and apply, which is, where is the growth going to come from? How are you driving the growth? What do you have in place? What do you need in place? How do you phase out the resourcing? So there's just these kind of core principles that you just can apply that really helps kind of map that out.
And tell me about, so when you get to a position in this, at your level, well, I think on one hand, that kind of gave you the freedom to sort of make these kind of choices on what you're looking for, as opposed to who's going to hire me, so
Right.
at this level, and that gives you that opportunity. But where does it also maybe stop a little, where you can't, being at a level and people sort of relying on you to a certain extent, that you maybe can't always trust your gut? Or does that ever happen? Where you sort of have to maybe follow the line a little bit because of the position you're in, as opposed to, a few years back, you could have, sort of changed, took those chances.
Yeah, totally. Right. So there's all sorts of all sorts of risk taking, kind of how you go about it. So, one of the things that I've been starting to really talk to our senior leadership team and our director team is, I use the analogy of a slack line. So the slack line is that kind of, fun line that you get to, with the tension that you tie between two trees, and you kind of crank on the arm, on the two trees to create tension in the line, and you can walk the line, do tricks on it and stuff. And I think that, I know, right? So I've seen it, I've tried it. It's really hard.
Another impressive skill you have.
But, I think the role of the CEO and particularly is, I'm always going to put more tension on the line in terms of aspiration and ambition. And the other tension on the other tree is achievability and ability to execute, right? And so it's constantly kind of finding that tension. And so, a lot of things that I think about are, setting a really compelling vision, setting a really compelling ambition, trying to make ideas bigger, and really relying on the team and having great leadership and a team in place that can continue to kind of grow into those aspirations and create those capabilities, and build the bricks, so to speak, that kind of help us continue to kind of achieve that. So it's that kind of constant balance on the risk thing. I think as a challenger brand, you can take way more risks once you know kind of who you are and what you stand for. You have to stand for something, and you have to stand against something, and you have to have a voice in that. So I think that's really important. The only thing that I'm a little bit more measured about with risk, particularly as you're in kind of growth mode, is just cash. Like, you got to just be very planful about sustainability of the economic model. How's your P&L looking? What investments do you make? How do you reinvest in people and systems and technology and all that really good stuff? So those are kind of my coefficients.
Mm-hmm. Well, getting away from that a little bit, I do want to ask, is there a time in your life, this is the one question I like to ask always, even at the summits or whatever, but for these interviews, about a silver lining. Was there a time in your past where something didn't work out, where you thought it was just this horrible thing, and it turned out that it was actually one of the best things that could have happened?
Yeah. yeah, so many times in my life. I think one of the things that kind of comes to mind for me is, back to the Stanford days. So I played soccer. I was a goalie, and
Captain.
yeah, captain. I know. My senior year, I made this incredible save, and I like totally dislocated my elbow. So sorry, my shoulder, so much so that I ended up having surgery and wasn't able to play for the rest of the season. And it was this interesting thing where you kind of reach this level and you're so good at something, and you just have this kind of sense of loss, but like, oh my God, I can't do that anymore. And the silver lining for me was one, just seeing, kind of Jen, the backup goalie, just, take the reins and have an unbelievable season. So it's just an example of like, other people being opportunities created for other people, and they just absolutely crush it and have an amazing time with it. And the other thing was too, is I, picked up mountain biking. I just was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna hang up my cleats. My time is over, and I'm just gonna move into what's next. So, I think it's a lot about just finding things that you're incredibly passionate about, and being open to passion. I'm a parent. I have a 14-year-old, and some
Boy.
parent, yeah, a boy, Mr. Finn. Finn is pretty cute. He just started freshman year of high school, and I read this a while ago in terms of parenting advice. But as a parent, your job is just to try to fuel the things that your kids are passionate about and expose them to things that they don't know that they're passionate about yet. And I think that's kind of how I think about my silver linings, or if an injury comes up, or something doesn't go out the right way, career-wise or that, then it's just an opportunity to take a step back and reevaluate and find something new and go for it.
You feel like injuring your shoulder that way, that it changed at all what you went towards career-wise? Like, you were so focused with soccer, and
Mhm.
perhaps you were, even considering doing something in, soccer, moving on, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Did it change in that aspect? I mean, who knows? You could have been.
No, I know. Well, I know this is like, back in the day where there weren't that many professional leagues, but yeah, for sure. I mean, I probably would have, continued playing for a couple of years, and, found a way to play professionally overseas, or did something. But for me, it was just like, oh, I'm just going to start my work career, earlier, and yeah, just take it as it take it as it
Yeah.
take it as it comes.
Well, and during all of this, from either back in your Stanford days or even today, is there someone that really influenced you? Like, who would you say in your life that might be someone that really made a change in your life?
Mhm. Um, yeah, so many people, work-wise, mentorship-wise. I worked with Chris Bruzo. He's now the CMO at EA, and was one of those leaders who is just so creative and so positive. And actually, I learned a lot about just kind of communications and leadership style from him. In addition to, this is a little secret nugget, which is how to activate. So it's so funny. Like we were on we were at a tour with a partner, and we needed to launch a new brand. And it was very much one of those kind of powered pet projects. And I remember Chris just picking up the cell phone, calling our amazing kind of ad agency and branding agency that we partnered with. It was like, I need a new brand. I need a Howard meeting by the end of next week. I'll be back in Seattle. We'll meet tomorrow on it. But it was just, he's just such this incredible, thoughtful marketer, but also could just be very specific about like, wow, when something's very urgent, or having that level of kind of care and attention in that, to just activate and get things going a little bit. But he's always one of those guys too that just was just the level of just kind of uber positivity. And that I remember when he interviewed me for a job, he was very, very serious, like taking notes and just kind of really examining me. And then he brings me into the office and he's like, I'm going to give you some feedback. And then it was just super, super positive. But he went through and read all the positive and questions related to the interview feedback before he hired me. And just that level of transparency and closeness and all that. One of the things that he said to me once, which is, he got called into Howard's office once, and then came down and he's like, Leslie, come here. And he's like, you have a new job, prevent the slide to mediocrity. And that's kind of how he would give you a brief, like, you know, like just here's your new job, prevent the slide to mediocrity. Like, great, got it.
Can you give me a little bit more specific?
Yeah, I know, exactly. It pretty much means everything: branding, packaging, product quality, everything.
That's funny. Well, so,
Yeah.
and I mean, it sounds like, I mean, just from how you work with your coworkers, the people who work with you, and it seems like you have that kind of relationship. Well, you listen to them, but you also are definitive. I mean, it seems like you're carrying it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honesty, transparency, you know, having each other's backs no matter what, I think is the rule of thumb. If you're on a leadership team and you don't have each other's backs no matter what, there's something wrong with you, or there's something wrong with your team. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of, that's what I've for sure learned along the way, because yeah, I mean, we're all here to kind of help each other better and help achieve the same outcomes. Yeah, that's totally what I do.
Well, before we end, I want to ask you this one last question. What is your guilty pleasure?
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I mean, I live in the great Northwest, and we have this thing called IPAs. I mean, Northwest craft breweries, I have to admit. So I am totally a fan of hazy IPAs now. I have to.
What would be hazy? Like kind of a mixture. I like more the blondes, like
Yeah,
much more lighter.
little but lighter. So hazier's like, it's kind of unfiltered, like New England style unfiltered. So the tasting notes you get will be like tropical, fruity, maybe sometimes piney, not super bitter. So my guilty pleasure is we have a new CMO. She's awesome and amazing. And so we're doing kind of our immersion sessions. And so for Amy's first 3 weeks, we're doing a tour of outdoor locations, you know, because it's very COVID friendly. So we'll sit outside. So today we're going to Chuck's Brewery for the 2:30 to 4:30 CMO CEO immersion, and I will enjoy a hazy IPA during work today.
It's hazy or hazing? Hazy.
Hazy.
Hazy. Yeah, hazing is totally different.
Yeah.
That will be for another conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's great. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching. And of course, we have a new episode every week. It's again, Media Post Insider Summit BTS. And thank you so much, Leslie. And I will be seeing you in Austin in just the few weeks. So that would be great. That would be great. So I'll actually get to be with you in person. But thank you so much for today.
Lisa, my pleasure. Really fun talking to you. Love the questions, and see you in Austin. We'll kayak and enjoy a hazy IPA together.
Yes, as long as there's no crocodiles or alligators.
Yeah, exactly.
I have like pairs of alligators and sharks. So anyway, I look forward to actually seeing you one-on-one in person.
Seeing you live. Take care.
You too.
Bye.